So lads, today the referees gave the report on the situation, and it's even worse. It's even worse than I imagined, and it was pretty.
Are going crazy at the WNBA referees. It's absurd justifications for targeting Caitlin Clark while shielding her attackers, which are somehow worse than what we initially believed. The official's official report on the Connecticut Sun disaster was recently revealed. This revelation confirms all of our suspicions regarding dishonest league officiating.
Why was J.C. Sheldon's foul of greater flagrant? In the judgment of the officials, the foul by Sheldon was unnecessary. The contact of Caitlin Clark's face. Furthermore, there was a wind-up and impact, and the contact of face carries potential for injury. How did you come to the conclusion that is a flagrant? How did you come up to the conclusion that it was unnecessary? There was a wind-up, and it was to the face. The three of them that is a flagrant 2. By definition.
Do you believe the WNBA is purposefully attempting to sabotage when it occurs between 47 and 2 minutes to 21 after witnessing the referee's pitiful explanations? The most damning piece of evidence we've ever seen about corrupt WNBA officiating was just released by Caitlin Clark. The official referee report from the Connecticut Sun versus Indiana Fever game. These officials not only failed at their jobs, but they also exposed themselves as totally biased against Caitlin Clark, while also shielding the players who attacked her. Allow me to dissect this complete farce, because each explanation only serves to further tarnish the officiating's reputation. The referees essentially acknowledged everything that fans had been yelling about while somehow believing their explanations. Made sense? It's similar to witnessing someone admit to a crime but maintaining their innocence. Let's discuss their justification for calling J.C.S. Sheldon's eye-gouging attack on Clark a flagrant 1 rather than the clear flagrant 2 and ejection that it ought to have been. Read that again slowly, since the referee stated that Sheldon's infraction was needless due to winding up an impact on Clark's face that might cause injury. They only explained why they called it a flagrant 1 while describing a textbook flagrant 2.
Unnecessary contact. Wind up and unnecessary. The two of those can be a flagrant 2. And face. You have described why was it a flagrant 2. You have just described a flagrant 2 as your answer.
The elements for a flagrant 2 include the possibility of injury and needless contact windup. In order to explain why it wasn't a flagrant 2, the referees actually stated all 3 components. It would be like claiming someone killed someone while defending your decision to just charge them with jaywalking. Given the utter lack of reason. In there, the fact that Sheldon's attack had nothing to do with basketball. Clark was dribbling with her left hand when Sheldon clawed her right eye. And the ball was nowhere close to where the contact occurred makes even more infuriating. Reasoning reveals how predetermined their decision was. Let's look at the referees. It's pitiful justification for not ejecting Marina Mabrey after she ran across the court to body check Clark to the ground during a dead ball situation, the collision. During a basketball play was a purposeful attempt to hurt the league's biggest star, but they managed to minimize it. Contact did not fulfill the requirements for a severe punishment and did not escalate to the point of dismissal. The Mayberry incident was so blatantly obvious that even casual spectators were asking for her dismissal in real time. She had no basketball reason to be anywhere. Apparently, assault during a dead ball doesn't count as long as it's against Caitlin Clark, near Clark. Let alone body-checking her to the ground was an act of pure retaliation intended to threaten and perhaps hurt her. But these dishonest referees claim that's just classic basketball. This is where the report becomes completely absurd. They somehow managed to, let's get this straight, Caitlin Clark should receive a technical penalty for being unsportsmanlike after being kicked in the eye and having her body checked to the ground. It is unsportsmanlike to be attacked and then hold your wounded eye while attempting to flee your attacker. What precisely was she meant to do in that circumstance?
What do you mean by get control of the game? In your words.
Get control of the game is call the fouls that are actually happening on the floor. right? And consistently call the fouls that are actually happening on the floor. Okay, not just if somebody swings and misses, right? Like, consistently call the foul.
Clark was essentially punished by the referees for being the victim of assault. Sheldon scratched her in. The eye bumped her belly, and Mabry blindsided her while holding her injured eye. It seems that the referee did not take this abuse quietly enough for their liking, which is victim blaming at its most ridiculous level. The referees thought Tina Charles' technical foul explanation was similarly strange. Pointing at someone and moving towards them, Charles sprinted in an unsportsmanlike manner towards Caitlin. Now counts as unsportsmanlike behavior deserving of a technical foul. But grabbing someone's eye and body and knocking them to the ground is just standard. BASKETBALL contact. The double standard is so blatant that it's offensive. The only rational explanation for Sophie Cunningham's flagrant 2 was that it was excessive and unnecessary, which ironically showed how incorrect all the other calls were. In response to what had been done to Clark, Sophie seized Sheldon by the neck. The distinction is that her action was formally referred to as although the initial attacks were downplayed. What's especially damning about this entire sequence is that the referees acknowledged they lost control of the game and claimed that the situation worsened because they didn't handle the earlier incidents appropriately. However, rather than owning up to their mistakes, they found ways to place the blame on everyone but the players who caused the issues. Another joke was Lindsay Allen's dismissal for fighting. She became involved in the altercation after Sophie pursued Sheldon. But her role was little in comparison to what other players had done during the game, but she was nonetheless kicked out while Mabry, who carried out the most heinous assault, was allowed to continue playing. The selective enforcement was blatantly apparent. During the post-game press conference, Coach Stephanie White handled the situation flawlessly. When reporters attempted to get Clark to comment on the officiating, White took over the questioning and shielded her star player from having to deal with the political minefield of criticizing referees while making it clear that it was unacceptable to officiate. White's criticism of the referees was devastating because, although delivered with professional restraint, it was damning. She claimed that the officials knew from the first quarter that things were getting out of control but were unable to control the situation. In essence, she accused them of being incompetent while preserving plausible deniability. White's remarks about how everyone in the league is improving, but the officials were the most cruel. She commended the players for becoming quicker, stronger, and more athletic than ever before, then remarked nonchalantly that the referees haven't kept up with the game's development, which was devastating from a diplomatic standpoint. White's strategy was brilliant because she strengthened the league and players while blaming the referees. She didn't criticize other teams or the WNBA as a whole. Instead, she made it apparent that the only problem was officiating competence, which makes it more difficult for the league to brush off her concerns as prejudiced grievances, is demonstrated by the fact that all of the league's coaches have been griping about officiating. The issue is systemic and evident to all parties involved. It is not just an Indiana fever problem. When everyone agrees that the referees are failing, it becomes impossible to dismiss it as sour grapes or team-specific bias. What is even more frustrating is that the situation could have been avoided if the referees had simply ejected Sheldon after her eye-gouging attack. This would have prevented all of the drama that followed. Sophie Cunningham wouldn't have felt the need to retaliate, and the game could have gone on without incident. Because the officials refused to protect their star player, Sophie, effectively. Did the referee's job for the players by making it clear that attacking Clark would have consequences? This made it feel like they had to police themselves in order to appropriately punish the initial assault. Throughout her second season, Clark's refereeing pattern has been continuously problematic. She frequently receives contact that might cause other players to flagrantly foul, and her reaction to being assaulted in some way justify technical faults. Basketball fans around the world are watching how the WNBA treats its biggest star. And what they see is embarrassing when your officials are openly biased against your most marketable player. The WNBA has received overwhelmingly negative social media reactions to this referee report. The double standard is so ingrained that it has become predictable. Therefore, it is impossible to ignore the international implications of this officiating disaster. When your officiating turns into a laughingstock, supporters are publicly ridiculing the justifications and pointing out the blatant bias, which undermines the credibility of the competition results. What's particularly concerning about this whole situation is how it impacts Clark's ability to play her natural game. Knowing that officials won't treat her fairly forces her to change how she plays, prevent injuries, which lowers the standard of basketball for everyone watching. It's also concerning because it sets a precedent for future games. Players know they can target Clark without suffering grave repercussions. There is a risky dynamic created when anyone who stands up for her is expelled. Since the officials have effectively removed Clark's security and painted her as a target, the business ramifications of this biased officiating are enormous. The fact that this occurred during a nationally televised game means that when referees put Clark in circumstances that could hurt her or impair her performance, they are jeopardizing the league's most precious asset. Clark is the biggest draw in women's basketball, drawing millions of viewers and packing venues.